So, you know, what I want to show you are two comments made by the Prime Minister, one from Parliament and the other from the interview we did with him during the elections, where he spoke of how the turnout in Jammu and Kashmir was one of his biggest high points of the whole election, that's what gave him the greatest amount of joy. And in Parliament, where he said that the battle against terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir is in its last legs.
आदरणीय सभापति जी, यहाँ कुछ आरोप लगाने की फैशन है, लेकिन कुछ आरोप ऐसे उसके जवाब घटनाएं खुद दे देती है और प्रत्यक्ष को प्रमाण की कोई जरूरत नहीं होती है। जम्मू कश्मीर में हाल में हुए लोकसभा चुनाव में मतदान के जो आंकड़े हैं वो पिछले 4 दशक के रिकॉर्ड को तोड़ने वाले हैं। और इसको सिर्फ कोई घर से गया बटन दबा के आया इतना नहीं है, भारत के संविधान को स्वीकृति देते हैं, भारत के लोकतंत्र को स्वीकृति देते हैं, भारत के इलेक्शन कमीशन को स्वीकृति देते हैं। ये बहुत बड़ी सक्सेस है आदरणीय सभापति। देशवासी जिस पल की प्रतीक्षा करते थे वो आज इतनी सहज सरलता के सामने दिख रही है आदरणीय सभापति।
मोदी जी, 2014 से पहले भी मैंने कश्मीर कवर किया है, उसके बाद भी किया है, और केवल एक शहर और डाउनटाउन नहीं बल्कि बॉर्डर्स तक, जहां पर लोगों ने को लगा कि वो इंक्लूसिव हो रहे हैं, वो जुड़ रहे हैं मुख्य धारा के साथ। फिर 370 आया, उसके बाद से पत्थरबाजी नहीं हुई, हड़ताल नहीं हुई। श्रीनगर में क्या कमाल की वोटिंग इस बार हो गई। पर एक बहुत बड़ा धड़ा है जो कहता है कि बताइए हमसे राज्य का दर्जा ले लिया है। आप जम्मू कश्मीर की जनता को कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
पहली बात है कि मेरे इस चुनाव में आपने सवाल पूछा होता तो मुझे अच्छा लगता, लेकिन आप लोगों ने नहीं पूछा। लेकिन मैं आपने विषय निकाला इसलिए मैं उसमें से सवाल भी पैदा करता हूं, जवाब भी देता हूं। इस पूरे चुनाव में मेरे लिए संतोष की पल कौन सी है? तो मेरे लिए संतोष की पल है श्रीनगर का वोटिंग, क्योंकि इसने इस बात को थप्पा मार दिया कि मेरी नीतियां सही है, मैं कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं करता हूं, मेरी सरकार धर्म के आधार पर भेदभाव नहीं करती है। जहां तक राज्य का दर्जा का हमने पार्लियामेंट में प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है और हम उस पर कमिटेड हैं। हाँ, हम सफल होना चाहते हैं, सफल इन द सेंस पॉलिटिकल पावर में नहीं, स्थितियों में। और पहले हम पर क्या गालियां पड़ती थी, आपने इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, चारों तरफ होलना मीडिया में, हम जाते थे मीटिंग में तो आप लोग मिलते थे तो इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, कौन सा लोकतंत्र है। गालियां खाई, लेकिन मेरे कश्मीर का भला मैंने किया है। मैं दूर का देख सकता था, आप 24 घंटे चैनल के लिए देखते थे, मैं देश के लिए देखता था। और इसलिए मैं इंटरनेट की गालियां खाने के बाद भी, इंटरनेट बंद कर करके भी मैं नौजवानों को गलत रास्ते से बचाने में सफल हुआ। दूसरा मेरा संतोष है, अब 10 साल का समय लगा लीजिए, मानो 2004 से 2014 कितनी माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए होंगे, 2014 से 24 कितनी माताओं के लाल बच गए। जीवन में इससे बड़ा संतोष क्या होता है जी?
So the big question now is, how should the Indian Army and the Indian state respond? Now, there can be some tactical responses by the Indian Army which don't need political approval, while the Indian Army is well within its authorization to carry out responses in the manner that the area commanders deem fit. The other is the kind of response that we saw at Balakot, the kind of response that we saw after Uri. So let me go across first to General Dua on your sense of, you know, whether the threshold, because the Prime Minister has said very clearly, andar ghus ke marenge, and you know, we'll pull your eye out and you dare attack us. Now Pakistan's attacking us again and again. There have been seven attacks in just the last 1 month since he was sworn in for the 3rd time. Has the threshold been breached already? How close are we to breaching that threshold which requires a cross-border action of some kind, how would you be looking at the question of how should India respond?
There have been several attacks, as we've all just discussed at length, in this south of Pir Panjal region. Especially this yesterday's attack, where we've lost 5 Revas and many more, and several are wounded. This is certainly a cause for concern. Army, as we speak, or the security forces, as we speak, are certainly taking action. What shape that action will take, when you said, should it be a cross-border attack or not? Now, that is something, if we delve into that, it'll be a matter of speculation. I mean, we'll have to leave that for the operations directorates.
I'm not getting into that, sir. Sir, I'm just, so that we are very clear, I'm not saying how will India respond. That's really for force commanders on the ground at this moment who are in service to decide. I'm saying, how should India respond? Given that there have been these 7 attacks, do you think the response is to go after these terrorists, to try and neutralize these 24 odd terrorists who are active in the Poonch region, or do you think it's time to do something bigger and more audacious in terms of messaging and signaling? What's your view on that?
It has to be a multi-pronged approach, as per my view. We have to tighten our grid in this IB sector, that is the international border sector of Kathua, Samba, and a little bit of Jammu district. We have to tighten and tighten the grid at the borders. The intelligence agencies have to get us better intelligence, and the security forces have to coordinate better. No matter if there is Western Command and Northern Command, that we have to coordinate, but we have to get this thing going. That is one prong. On the other hand, we need to think of bold responses, certainly. What shape that bold response will take, and I was saying that earlier, what shape that bold response will take, the leadership has to take that call. Third, we have to diplomatically isolate Pakistan on this kind of high-profile terror attacks that Pakistan is now promoting and encouraging across the borders into our territory. And last, we need to ensure that we should continue with our elections process and do whatever it takes to keep that under a certain threshold, so that the state elections which are imminent, are conducted in time. And
Colonel Shukla, given what happened after Uri, given what happened after during Balakot, how close are we to the threshold that this government has set for itself, which would necessitate a cross-border response? Has it already been breached in aggregate? If you add up these attacks, it's a very big number. Have we reached that threshold? Are we about there? How would you define and determine that threshold? Colonel Shukla.
Threshold, by and large, determines itself. You don't, you don't have to have a numbers count or a bodies count. The country knows, and the country politically expresses when it's time to retaliate. And I don't think it's time yet to retaliate with the cross-border strike. It would be overreaction. And as you yourself brought out just now, the last one didn't yield any sort of major change results. So it was not worth it. But one thing has to be done. This whole business of the Jammu area coming alive and being sort of a part of the terrorist scheme of things now is something that has to be stopped. Jammu presents a rest and recreation ground for the terrorists in Kashmir. It sort of allows people to infiltrate on a much easier basis from the Pakistan side than the high snow-covered mountains of Kashmir. So the whole sort of ability of terrorists to use the Jammu region as a R&R camp or as a sort of rest area has to be brought to a halt. It was done earlier, post the 2002 elections. The sort of whole story in the narrative in Jammu and Poonch and Rajouri had completely changed. And that came as a big pressure on the terrorists who were operating in Kashmir. So I think that is what we need to
Sushant
focus on
Sareen,
right
Ajay
now.
Shukla says it's not time to cross the border and retaliate inside Pakistan. Is that something you agree with, or do you think given the standards the Modi government has set and all the public posturing, we are very close to when the Indian state will have to respond cross-border?
Yeah, they'll have to, but I would imagine. Look, I don't entirely disagree with what Ajay is saying, but the point is, we could have a disagreement on whether that particular threshold has been reached. You know, if 9 civilians in a bus are massacred, if you are having ambushes of the kind you are having, then clearly, something's got to give. One. Secondly, I think it's important that how do we define the threshold? Ajay is speaking about something very ephemeral. हमको पता लग जाएगा. But the bottom line is that I think as a serious nation, you have to start defining. Is it 16 people getting burned? Is it 40 people being blown up? Or are you going to say that, okay, fine, I'm not going to be a frog in a boiling pot, a boiling pan. I'm going to hit back. Now, what form the hit back takes, you can decide. But it has to deliver the message to the other side that you're willing to up the ante. So you have to up the ante. But Rahul, at the end of the day, you also have to make a case internationally, whether we like it or not. And that international case has to be that, look, these are not local guys. For example, the Kulgam guys were all locals, right? You have to make a case that these are guys who are actually being directed from Pakistan, who are being controlled from Pakistan, who have Pakistanis coming in to help them, beef them up, give them training and carry out operations, give them all kinds of other equipment and other stuff. You have to start making that case so that if you are going to up the ante, nobody in the world can turn around and say that, look, what the hell are you trying to do? So I think it is important to deliver the message.
So you're saying up the ante, there's also an election. The moment you up the ante and then you're building up to an election which has to be concluded before September, Mr. Ved, there is that complication as well, because naturally India would want that it seem that things are as calm and normal as possible in the build up to the election. If you're constantly having these 7 attacks in a month, that's a very big number. What would you suggest? Up the ante, cross the border, strike the terrorists at their bases like we've done in the past, or go after the terrorists who are present in the Jammu region and try and neutralize them first?
Rahul, we must understand most of these terrorists who are operating in Jammu region, like Kashmir, are foreigners. 2 terrorists who got neutralized near Hiranagar were foreigners. The 3 who got eliminated only 3 days back in Doda were foreigners. All those who are operating Rajouri Punch are foreigners. Now, I don't know about this present group. Most probably, this also seems to be part of the Doda group who have crossed from the international border. My first suggestion is, first, we must take steps to strengthen the anti-infiltration grid. These incidents are happening because the terrorists have managed to enter, whether from IB or the LOC. You need to take the leadership of the army and the BSF needs to take steps to ensure that infiltration does not take place. Maybe local sport is there. After all, without that sport, these foreigners cannot operate. That need to be handled strictly by J&K police. Identify those people and go after them. And those who are operating within need to be neutralized as soon as possible. But as far as your question of going across the border, the intent of attack on Riyasi incident was to have as many as 40 plus casualties. It was just good fortune that the bus fell down and they could not execute all of them, although the terrorists came down and fired even after the accident. So that would have been something like Pulwama. But after every incident, you cannot go across and have something like surgical strike or what happened after Pulwama. So first we need to strengthen our inside thing. Don't allow.
I just want to show this data to Ashpreet. and to everyone else. This compares terror attacks in the 10 years of UPA with the 10 years of the Modi Sarkar. Now, if you see, under the UPA, 1,402 civilians were killed. That figure is at 353. Security forces martyred under UPA in 10 years was 185, less than half at 585 under the NDA. Terrorists killed is 3,963. NDA is 1,726. This is data according to the South Asia Terrorism Portal. So across different parameters, the level of terrorism, Ashpreet, is substantially down. In some cases, it's almost a fifth. In some cases, it's half. So yes, there is a problem in the last 1 month, but net, things in Jammu and Kashmir, when it comes to the issue of terrorism, have, at least in the first 10 years of the Modi government, actually been getting better.
Rahul, kindly allow me a minute and a half uninterrupted. Number one, you talked of data, I'll give you the data. In UPA regime from 2012 to 2014, 61 civilians and 115 officers from the security forces were killed. And in the last 3 years of the Modi government, 110 civilians were killed, 2020 to 2022, and almost double, 137 security forces were killed despite...
No, but you're cherry picking a time period. I'm comparing 10 years of Modi versus 10 years of Manmohan.
No, but time period also matters. Now we are talking of the latest figures. We are talking of 2020 to 2022. Now, number two, I'll give you another example of how the Bharatiya Janata Party's government ignores Jammu and Kashmir. There was no candidate that they fielded in the Lok Sabha election in Jammu and Kashmir. Number two, despite this debate being on such an important topic, such a sensitive topic, they haven't sent a spokesperson. Rarely does Mr. Modi visit Jammu and Kashmir. These are three major examples. Next is that as much focus and as many visits that Mr. Modi gives to election-going states, if 10% of that would have been given to Jammu and Kashmir, there would have been a massive, a significant difference.
Okay.
When there will be an election in Jammu and Kashmir, you will see 10 times more visits will be there by the Bharatiya Janata Party's leaders, because election is all that matters. That last point. Rahul, when I talked of that Mr. Modi should visit Jammu and Kashmir, he should take stock of the situation, you misinterpreted that. I don't know how and why, but I'll tell you what. When the stock of the situation is taken, Mr. Modi doesn't have to go to the place of the occurrence. He just has to go to Jammu and Kashmir at a safe, secure place, meet with the DGP, meet with the governor, and make people see that he's concerned about them, that they matter to them. Because, of course, Mr. Modi's life is very important, but so is the lives of all those locals that are there, that have been dying, that have been...
So you've heard different perspectives. If he goes, it also shows that everything is shaken and stirred, that he's dropped everything he's doing and he's rushing over there. What he needs to do is really take a call on when that threshold is reached. And you've heard different perspectives. Should we up the ante? Because they can keep striking and we can keep berating lapses in procedure, protocol, norms which led to those attacks, or will we strike back and send a very strong message to Pakistan and to their handlers that this kind of attack is completely unacceptable? So we've had an incisive conversation. I want to thank our guests for lighting up the conversation with their insights.